Hi, this is Garth. Today we're going to look at making an array of boxes and controlling them with an attractor point. I'm just going to get out the tools we need, the operations, the wireframe, and the surfaces tool. Additionally, if you right click in this menu area and go to graphic properties, you'll get an extra drop-down list up here that we'll make use of soon. So I'm in a new part file. I've got a geometrical set. If I highlight it and press Alt-Enter, I can change the name of it in feature properties here. Let's call this base geometry. And now within that, let's create a point at 0, 0, 0. And Alt-Enter, rename this one base point. And now let's create a second point. Let's put this one for now at -1, -1, so it's out of the way of our grid of boxes that we're going to create. Let's right-click, go to Reframe On so that it shows up. I'm going to orient it like that. And then if you highlight that point, you can go to this drop down in the graphic properties and make it look like a square so it looks different from the other points we're going to need to create. Alright, click on part 1, insert geometrical set, and let's call this module. And this is where we're going to create our box. Alright, we're going to create a box with the base point centered on the bottom of the box. So let's start by making a line. Point direction. We want to start with the base point. Direction is going to be the YZ plane. Start is going to be -0.5 millimeters. End is going to be 0.5 millimeters. That gives us a 1 millimeter line with the base point centered on it. And we're going to press OK. Now we're going to take our line and extrude it. Direction is going to be the ZX plane. And limit 1 is going to be 0.5 millimeters, and limit 2 is going to be 0.5 millimeters. You don't need to do a negative with the extrude command. Now to make our box, let's extrude that surface. And our direction is going to be the XY plane. Limit 1, let's make that 1 millimeter. Limit 2, let's make that 0. And let's press OK. Okay, so now we have a box. It's not tied to anything. So let's take our extrude again, double click it, get the menu back up, and let's make it so that the height of the box is tied to the distance from the base point to the attractor point. So in this dimension, I can right click and go to Edit Formula, and this brings up the formula editor. In this dictionary, it has a bunch of helpful functions to enter in here. If I find measures, the first one there is distance. I'm going to double click that and it enters it for me. And then I'm going to double click my base point and then my attractor point. So if you read this, it's the distance from the base point to the attractor point. And my attractor point is still called point 2. We can rename that attractor point. I'm just going to get out of this command first. Hit OK, hit yes there, and hit OK. Now let's just rename this point quickly called attractor point, and that'll change it in the formula. Everything's linked together here. So now if we move our attractor point around, you see the height of the box will change. But to give ourselves a little more control, let's make a parameter. This f of x down here, if we click that, we get the formulas window. And you can create parameters of all kinds of types. Usually you're going to want one that's in the first 10 or so. We want real this time. So click this new parameter button. You have to click that to actually create it. And then press OK. So now we have this parameters drop down in the tree. Alt-Enter to rename. Change this local name to height factor. And let's change this height factor to, let's say, 2. You do that by double-clicking the parameter, and it brings up this little window, and you can change the value. Now what we're going to do is double-click on our extrude again. You see this grayed out. You can't edit this value there because it's tied to a formula, but you can press this F of X button to get back into the formula. So we're going to keep the distance we had there, but now we're going to divide it by putting a slash there and then clicking this height factor. So now it's going to be that distance divided by the height factor, which right now is 2. And we're going to hit OK. So now we can change this value, say to 4, and it reduces the size. And this will just give us more control once we have our array of boxes. So that's really everything there is to our module here. The one extra thing we have to do is in this relations dropdown. This formula is what's creating the tie between the distance and the height. So let's move that formula into our module so that each module has its own formula. In some cases, you're also going to want to move the parameter into the module. In this case, we're going to leave it outside so that it can control all the boxes at once. Just try to be conscious of what's inside your module and what's outside. Let's also hide in our module, hide the line and hide the first extrude, so all we're left with is the box. So now we want to create 25 of these. Let's start by creating 5 in a row. Let's get to our base point and let's start a translate. Let's use the YZ plane as the direction. Let's get a 1 millimeter distance there. And if I click this repeat object after OK, what it'll do is allow me to create 3 more instances. Uncheck this create in a new body, keep this on absolute, and now we have 5 boxes in a row there. So here's how we create our array of boxes. Click on the module, press Control C, click on the part, and do Control V. You need to click on the part before you do Control V because it'll create the new one within whatever geometrical set you highlighted. So now we have 2 modules in the same place. I'm going to take this one, right click it, go down to Module Object, and choose Edit Inputs. Now this has all the inputs to this module, everything that's not within the module that affects it. I'm going to choose base point here, and I'm going to click on the next point in the array and press OK. Now I have 2 boxes. I can move the attractor point and it affects both of our boxes. Okay, so let's do this a couple more times. Go to part 1, Control V, right click, Module Object, Edit Inputs, click on base point, and click on the next point in the array. Good. Now I see I actually created a couple more points than I need. We're going to do 2 more boxes, and then we're not going to need those points. Actually, you see, the problem I did here is that I actually created the array within the module, so it was bringing that array with it. So let's actually backtrack. This is just good to see. You see why we don't want to create the array within the module. So let's delete that. Let's delete that. And now these translates, let's make a new geometrical set that's outside our module and call this array. And let's highlight the 4 of these translates. Let's right click, go down to selected objects and change geometrical set. And now I can click on array there and press OK. So now I have these outside of my module. It was a mistake to have them in there. But it was actually good for everybody to see why that doesn't work, because it was creating a new array each time I created a new module. So now let's go through that same protocol. Let's Control C, Control V our module, go to Module Object, Edit Inputs, change the base point. Module object, edit inputs. In this case, I actually copied one of the new modules, so the new base point is translate 1. That's okay. I'm going to click and move that to the next translate. Let's copy the original module again. Control V, right click, module object, edit inputs. Change the base point there. Do it once more. Alright, so now I have 5 boxes. And I can move my attractor point and it affects all the boxes. Okay, so we don't want to create 25 individual modules that way. So we actually want to take the modules we created and make a super module. So I'm going to insert a new geometrical set into part 1, and let's call this super module. Now my super module wants to contain my modules, so I'm going to drag all 5 of my modules into the super module. And in this case, the super module wants to have the array that all of my first set of modules are based on. So let's take that array into there. You can actually right click and hide it. We don't need to see those points, but they need to exist as we copy this super module over. So now we need a new array, and we're going to do it right this time. Click on part 1, insert geometrical set, call this array 2. So now in this array 2, we're going to click on the base point, click on the translate, and our direction will be the ZX plane, 1 millimeter. And we're going to hit the repeat object after OK again. And now we have 5 going in that direction. So now we're going to take our super module, Control C, Control V into part 1 again. We're going to right click it, go down to super module object, and edit inputs. Again, this is going to be the exact same thing, it's just that our super module contains 5 modules, but it's all still based on the same inputs, a base point plus these other inputs that we don't need to mess with right now. So click on base point, and now let's click on our first translate of that set, and we got another one. Control V, edit inputs. Alright, that gave us an array of boxes, and now we can move the attractor point around and see what happened there. It's telling us there's a problem. We put the attractor point exactly where one of the base points is for one of the boxes, and that means the extrude didn't work and the model broke. So let's make our Z for our attractor point like -0.1 millimeters, just so it hovers below all of these base points and it never actually touches them. Now we can keep moving it around. We can also change our height factor. We can change it to 1. All the boxes get taller. We can change it to 5, and all the boxes get shorter. So that's our box array tutorial. In the next tutorial, we're going to just start to add a little bit of complexity above what we did here.